All right, everyone. Hello and welcome to this week's edition of Elections Weekly. As always, I'm your host, Eric Cunningham. We've got Joe Szymanski, Dylan Brown with us here. And this is going to be a fairly brief episode. We're going to kind of touch into some of the election details that we found since the midterms. It's been a couple days. Not all of the results have been counted, particularly in the West Coast. We're waiting on election finalizations from places like Arizona, Nevada, California, Oregon, Washington, places like that. That's we're really waiting for some of these results to be finalized. But for right now, we're going to go over what we know right now, which is basically that last Tuesday, the midterm election was an election of contradictions to a great degree. I don't think we've seen a midterm like this in my lifetime, and we've certainly not seen it in quite a while. We saw a situation where Republicans have gained seats in the House. We don't know how many seats they have gained, but it looks like they have gained seats. It seems like they got a pretty good chance to take the House, so the Democrats have a shot to hold the houses very, very narrowly. Either party here, majority is going to be pretty narrow overall. On the other hand, yeah, and on the other hand, the Democrats had a pretty good night in the Senate. In fact, bordering on a really good night. They won the Senate race in Pennsylvania against expectations from pretty much everyone. They won the popular vote in Georgia's Senate race by about a percentage point, while Brian Kemp was doing a greater than expected margin of victory. They appear to have pretty good shot in Arizona, unless something really crazy happens. We do expect Mark Kelly to pull it out there. And Nevada, we're waiting for the returns there. We don't know how much is left in Clark, but they still have a chance to win that, and it may be a pretty good one. On top of that, a lot of candidates that Trump endorsed in particular went down in flames. So let's go ahead and start here. What are your thoughts looking at this? This is a very unpolarized election. I'm thinking it's very, very much to R+2 or R+1 generic ballot is what it's looking to balance out to. But on the whole, this is an election that kind of split down the middle in a lot of ways that we wouldn't have expected if you had known the country was shifting 6 points, 5 points to the right from 2020.
Yeah, I mean, this was a really weird election to watch. At the start of the night, it was looking like a bloodbath because of the Florida results. But I mean, I really do think it just came down to candidate quality in a lot of areas.
This is a candidate quality election, especially in the Rust Belt. I think that might be where it's the most localized. You look at Pennsylvania, you look at Ohio, and you look at Michigan. You very clearly see signs of weaker than what should have happened candidates dragging down lower ballot and making it a night of messes for the Republican Party there. You look at Pennsylvania, where Democrats are probably narrowly going to take the state house by 1 or 2 seats, in part because of how poorly Doug Mastriano performed. You look at Ohio, J.D. Vance underperforming Trump by a pretty wide extent, probably costing Republicans a House seat or 2 in the 1st and 13th district. You look at Michigan, again, Tudor Dixon doing as bad as she did, probably costing allowing Michigan Democrats to have a trifecta for the first time in almost 50 years. I mean, it's pretty clear. It's pretty clear and obvious data signs. I hate to tell, there'd be people who are trying to cope on the social media and in real life. I'm sorry. Your candidates were bad. Your candidates were crap. I don't care how your candidate did in the safe Republican district. It's a safe Republican district. We won it anyways.
The only...
we care about winning where it's competitive, and we didn't win where we needed to. Winning where it's needed to is the most important, and we just failed to do that.
Yeah, the only counterpoint to the candidate quality narrative, specifically in the Rust Belt, is that Ron Johnson did notably worse than his polling. He's going to win by, I think, 1% roughly, when he was up 3, 4, 5.
3 to 4.
Yeah, 3 to 4 in the polling average. So, yes, candidate quality mattered. Oz underperformed. Mastriano underperformed.
I mean, I think some would even push back and say Ron John's not really that good in the first place.
I would disagree.
I don't know that I would disagree with that analysis.
No, I disagree entirely. I think actually, if you consider that Dane County and Milwaukee had very impressive turnout for Democrats, the fact that Tony Evers won re-election by almost 3 percentage points, something that was not expected for him to win by this large a margin if he won at all. indicates I think Johnson actually did a very good job of holding on. The problem again was I think you had to this some degree, at least in this split ticket voting, and that was mainly because Tim Michaels proved to be an abysmal candidate in the WOW counties in the suburbs. Another Trump endorsed candidate who ran a very poor campaign, who seemed to be a very poor choice from the start, and just proved to be a complete disaster of a candidate that lost a very winnable race against a very mediocre, in terms of popularity, governor. You look at states like that, it makes you really wonder how things could happen if it's like in that case, Rebecca Kleefisch had been the nominee, or it makes you wonder how Pennsylvania could have gone if it had been Dave McCormick, how Lou Barletta as governor could have been, how Arizona could have gone if you had Karen Taylor Robson as the gubernatorial nominee instead of Carrie Lake. If even Big Jim Lamon or Brnovich had been the nominee for the Senate there. It just pretty clearly seems to be there's a trend. The candidates that did very well on the Republican side were candidates that ran away from Trumpism or created their own personal brand. The ones that did the worst were the ones that were intrinsically tied to them. You can look at this even as far as Arkansas. Arkansas's Republican senator won by 7 percentage points more than Sarah Huckabee Sanders. Sarah Huckabee Sanders lost Washington County. That is ridiculous for context here. You should not be losing Washington County as a Republican as of right now. And she managed to do it. Did she run a terrible campaign? No. Did the Trump name hurt her? That's about the only reason I can think of you would lose that county in a midterm. But it's not all doom and gloom for Republicans, right? I mean, we'll talk about Florida and New York here, but just in particular with Black and Hispanic voters, it wasn't the Hispanic surge people necessarily thought, but the signs are very, very encouraging for Republicans, even long term. With losing 2 of those 3 races in the Rio Grande Valley, the signs the signs there are pretty favorable for Republicans. Black voters in particular, rural Black voters, turned pretty majorly. Either they failed to turn out or they turned against Democrats. The Black Belt areas in North Carolina, several counties there were far closer than normal. Washington County, for example, went from Biden plus 10 county to a Beasley plus 3 county. And I don't mean 3%. I mean Beasley plus 3 votes county. You had areas like this, North Republicans winning Senate races there. Benny Thompson only winning his House race by 15% as of right now in a rural majority Black district. Urban areas even to some degree. Republicans had some really strong signs in other areas, but it was divorced from this national polarization along urban, rural, suburban, educated, college educated, which is what makes this election so interesting to look at, I think.
I'll point this out too. We talked about this in the chat, but I'm looking even at the congressional election in Virginia's 4th congressional district, which hosts a good chunk of the south side portion of Virginia, the southeastern part of Virginia, where it's very tiny, but a good chunk of the counties there are plurality to majority African American, and even there in the 4th district, you saw pretty hefty swings towards the Republican congressional candidate. 21 points in Emporia, 11 points in Southampton, 13 in Sussex, 8 in Surrey, 8.5 in Brunswick. That's something that's very interesting to me. And
it makes you wonder long term if the VRA applies here. If the sort of controlling vote condition long term, these areas aren't too important for statewide control, but they do matter for congressional races, right? Like that 4th district. Previous designs had some of those areas combined into Randy Forbes' seat. Would that still be a gerrymander now? We really don't know, but it's certainly concerning if you're a Democrat just looking at those small rural areas.
Yeah, I mean, I would be interested to see some, I guess, exit polling on that area, see what the swings were, see if it was just depressed Black turnout. I doubt it was. It seems like those swings would require some persuasion of rural Black voters. But I'd be interested to see, because we know what drove Hispanic voters in 2020. I'd be interested to see what drove this.
Yeah, but we'll go ahead and move on here to our second area of focus here, which is the 2 red areas, the 2 shining examples of Republicans that we can look at, 2 Republicans can point to and say potentially this is a model to look at, or this is what saved our butts in the House of Representatives. I'm talking about Florida and, bizarrely enough, New York, a state we utterly discounted, a state I utterly call mea culpa on, even though I did look at the scenarios. And the map that actually happened looks very similar to the competitive New York map I created in the election shuffler. We didn't see this coming. We saw it coming in Florida. We did not see a 20-point win for Ron DeSantis coming. I can tell you that. We did not see Red Palm Beach. We did not see double-digit Miami-Dade. We did not see Osceola and Seminole counties flipping back. Duval, Pinellas, Hillsborough. We did not see all of this happening. Single-digit Orange County, home to Orlando. We did not see the degree of this coming. The 23rd district, the being competitive. Lois Frankel's seat being competitive. Darren Soto only winning re-election by 8 points. We didn't see that coming. And while this did not help Republicans at all in their quest for House control, it changed none of the House results. What it did show is, I think, a particular example of a Republican casting their own brand in a Republican Party that so utterly outclasses the Democratic Party in its own state to a degree I don't think we've seen in a very, very long time.
So I have a theory on why these are the two examples, and I think it's the same reason that Pennsylvania went the way it did, but slightly extrapolated. I think it was just incompetent Democratic parties.
Mm-hmm.
New York, Kathy Hochul had a 30%. What was her approval rating? It was low.
It was not terrible. It was in the mid-40s last I could tell, low to mid-40s at worst. We didn't get a whole lot of public approval polling for her.
So low to mid-40s. From what I can tell, she did not run a fantastic campaign.
No.
And Zeldin campaigned his heart out. I mean,
yeah,
give him all the credit for that. He campaigned his heart out.
But,
yeah.
What we're talking about with New York, by the way, the gubernatorial race is within 6 points. We expect this to grow. My personal guess is it finishes at about 7 or 8 once mail-in voting comes in further. But what's astonishing more so is that the rest of the ticket, it was not just a Zeldin wave. It was the rest of the ticket wave. New York 25, the House district we utterly kind of dismissed out of hand as being competitive, within 8. Kathy Hochul almost lost Erie, her home county, home of Buffalo. Democrats lost 2 House districts on Long Island, the 3rd and the 4th districts, one of which George Santos became one of the first gay Republicans to be elected openly, probably the first to be elected openly as an incoming member of Congress. That was actually the first House race in history that we know of where both of the candidates in the race were openly gay. A very major milestone, I think, one that most people can applaud at this point. So that's a very, very good thing. The 4th district, we didn't expect that at all. That's a Hampshire. You saw Zeldin getting 37% of the vote in Queens, 29% of the vote in Brooklyn. Republicans winning 2 of the 3 Hudson Valley seats, Mark Molinari's seat and Sean Patrick Maloney's seat. Those are the 2 that flipped. That's a 4-seat firewall for Republicans in New York that, 1, we did not expect, and 2, might actually deliver them a House majority, interestingly enough.
Can I just say, Sean Patrick Maloney losing is both very funny.
It's the funniest thing that happened all night.
And a shining example of my point about an incompetent Democratic Party.
The good news, though, is Kathy Hochul does not think the state share of the Democratic Party should resign after this. She's satisfied with her performance. She's
good. No introspection. Good. That's what I love to hear.
The thing is too is that the thing is, like, we've talked about New York, is that it happened everywhere in New York. Like, even Chuck Schumer his no-name opponent is probably going to get like 41% of the vote.
He's only winning by 12. He's winning by 12 or 13 points right now.
13 points. He's winning by 13 points at this point.
The AG candidate, AG race is within 10 points. Did anyone have that race on their radar? Did we spend any money there? I don't think Republicans spent any money there.
Would Cuomo have lost this race? I tend to think so.
No, he's too strong downstate.
If Cuomo were the nominee right now with all of his issues, I don't know that he survives.
That is the weird thing. It's the weird thing here is that Zeldin, I gave my benchmarks, right, for what you would need to do for Republicans to win New York.
Zeldin got 56% of the vote in Rockland County.
That's crazy. Yeah. No, here's the thing. He swung 20 percentage points to the right, Nassau and Suffolk counties. That's exactly what you need to do to win New York. He didn't swing the other two, Westchester and Rockland and Putnam, as much, but he swung them 10 to 15 points. That's still, especially in Westchester, that's an achievement right there. 37% in Brooklyn, or 37% in Queens, really strong among Asian voters, 29% in Brooklyn. his weakness really was that he did not get 40%.
It's crazy
he got over 30.
It's just crazy how this doesn't match up too. Like George Santos won by 8 points. This was drawn as a Biden plus 8.5 seat in the 3rd district, and George Santos won by 8 points.
George Santos
does not match up with the entire rest of the country.
It doesn't.
Like, this doesn't make. There's no like. There was. What?
Yeah,
the
there's
hell?
no uniform swing. There was
It's a localized wave.
Swing.
Democrats need to be thanking their lucky stars this wasn't a Republican plus 5 or 7 year nationally, because that, I mean, at that point you're starting to deal with some genuine trends upstate that could be concerning. What I would say, it's troubling.
You're talking about New York 25 maybe flipping.
Yeah, New York 25, New York 20 was within 10 points. Paul Tonko only won by 10 percentage points, less than 10 as of right now.
I mean, it was crazy enough that George Santos almost won the Queens portion of the 3rd district.
If the court had drawn that super Jewish seat in South Brooklyn, Republicans would actually be looking at like a 14-12 House map in New York right now, where they were at the 12. That's ridiculous.
Crazy.
Yeah.
That probably will not happen again. I would be. I mean, I say that, but apparently Jay Jacobs isn't going anywhere. So.
And that's the weird thing is we, to whatever degree this is a wave or a localized wave, you don't know how much this will stick. What I would be concerned by if I was a New York Democrat is the fact this did not stop with Hochul. This went to Tish James. This went to the comptroller. This went to Chuck Schumer. This went to local.
The fact that it went to Schumer is the concerning part.
For context here, Schumer routinely wins elections with 65 to 70% of the vote, sweeping almost every county in the state, including upstate. The dude was enormously popular in New York. I would have said He was enormously popular.
Well, remember, he is the majority leader now.
I would say, to be fair, he has become much since his last 2016 becoming majority leader in those 6 years. Obviously, certainly, probably, I would have been stunned if he would have won Staten Island. Like, that wasn't going to happen. To give credence to Eric's point, though, Dylan, the shift maybe should not have been as clear from as it was.
Agreed. I'm just saying that is a factor that needs to be considered. No, that is concerning.
Yeah, for his last 3 elections, since he won election for the first time in 1998, by 10%, he's won 71.2% of the vote, 66.3%, 70.6%. This is his worst performance in the state of New York since 2000 or since 1998. This is the worst performance for a Democrat in the state of New York since 2000 at the federal level. It's bad.
What worries me isn't necessarily these results, because I think these results could flip back.
Mm-hmm.
But what worries me is I don't think Democrats are going to do any introspection on this. No. Florida might, only because there might not be enough Florida Democrats left to form a Florida Democratic Party. But in New York, they're not going to do any introspection.
Mm-hmm.
They're not going to think about how to stop this again.
And they should, because long-term, 30% in New York for Republican is a good threshold for Republicans. If they can continue to grow that, 30% is more than Pataki got in New York City in 1994 for comparison. This is an anemic, embarrassing performance for New York City Democrats in particular.
Yeah, and they need to think about that, and they won't. Look, I'm not saying they need to run tough on crime Democrats. I don't think they do. But you might want to, I don't know, pay lip service or
pretend to care
about it.
Pretend to care.
Yeah, give lip service. You don't have to actually do anything. Can we acknowledge that there's a problem?
But no, you don't understand. Violent crime is down except for murder.
I mean, look, I think that's a valid statistic to bring up, but also that doesn't make murder victims feel better.
No, it's
families of murder victims.
Yeah, no, I mean, nothing would make them. To be fair, nothing would make the murder victims feel better because they are dead. That would be the families that are.
Yes. No, but I mean, look, I don't want them to change their stance on crime generally, because I think their crime policy is generally fine. do some introspection, please.
Mhm. Yeah. And I do want to mention before we move on to the bad candidates that cost Republicans potentially the Senate, I want to go over two other states where Republicans did really well. Three, actually, just to a lesser degree. North Carolina, Republicans utterly dominated, but only won by 4, which that sounds weak, but it's North Carolina. Republicans almost slipped the first district, got within 8 in the 6th district. They did lose the 13th because of Bo Hines, the notorious carpetbagger, but they secured all judicial races statewide, including the 2 Supreme Court races, all Court of Appeals races, flipped the Senate to a supermajority and are 1 seat off from a supermajority in the House, which means they effectively can have a supermajority whenever one Democrat votes with them. Not a great night for Democrats. Georgia, Brian Kemp, 9.5 point win or whatever, 9, 8, 9, whatever point win. Big. Nobody expected this. Absolutely bonkers. It's also crazy he did this without Cobb County. And also Texas, Greg Abbott winning by 12, 13 points against Beto O'Rourke. Really strong performance in a state that Democrats are really having an issue with.
I'm not actually at all surprised by Greg Abbott's performance. Yeah. If anything, that's on the lower end of what I would have expected.
Yeah, we were hearing stuff like Red Harris County. That did not ultimately happen, but what did happen is still a pretty bad night. Let's go on to start with Joe, though. What are these bad candidates? We mentioned J.D. Vance. We mentioned Dr. Oz. We mentioned, I believe, Doug Mastriano. Where did these come from? What is going on? And how many seats did they cost the Republican Party? Because it seems like they cost them a lot of seats.
I actually am not going to be blaming Oz a whole lot. I think nominating Dave McCormick could have brought on 1 or 2 points. I think he would have come out of the primary a lot more popular. He wouldn't have been as open. I know Democrats online are saying, oh, well, it would be the same thing, someone from out of state. I mean, at least Dave McCormick, at the very least, was born and raised in the state of Pennsylvania. Like, he was born and raised here. He moved out.
Pennsylvania.
Makes the world of difference.
Out, but he actually, he was born and raised here.
Yeah, so that makes a world of difference.
So those attacks would not have been as effective. But this is not all squarely on Oz. A lot of this is on the fact that Doug Mastriano lost by 14, potentially 15 points. We don't know how the rest of that Philly result's going to break. So here's the thing: you can't do that anymore in this day of partisan politics.
How much did Tom Wolfe win by in 2018?
Tom Wolfe won by 18, and Bob Casey won by 16.
Again, this is in a Democratic D+8 year against a guy who was talking about stomping his faith with golf spikes.
And 2 incumbents, by the way, as well, both incumbents.
Yeah.
Yes.
So the fact that Mastriano is going to only do about 4 points better, 3 to 4 points better than Wagner, is a sign that he ran a worse campaign than Wagner. Wagner would have done better than Doug Mastriano this election. I kid you not.
I don't think anyone was beating Shapiro, but I think others would have made.
No, I don't know. And I don't know. Considering how we had this election, I don't know if anyone was beating Shapiro. Maybe Bill McSwain, maybe Dave White. I don't think Lou would have. Maybe McSwain or White would have. But I can tell you that all 3 of them would have not done so badly that it would have drugged down the Pennsylvania State House and maybe could have saved Oz. I don't know.
Yeah.
At the very least, I think Oz could have done a point or 2 better. I don't know if he wins, but I also think Lisa Scheller might have, won as well. Over Stephen Wild if this happens, quite honestly.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to overstate how bad Doug Mastriano was. Doug Mastriano was worse than I expected.
He's one of the worst. He may have been the worst of the Democrat, or aside from J.R. Majewski, I think has that title of the largest underperformance from Trump. Just an utterly embarrassing, imbecile campaign from someone who should not have been surprised in hindsight how bad his campaign was. Herschel Walker running 9 points behind Kemp, down a point to Warnock. It's going to a runoff, but if you're Warnock, you have to feel pretty happy about that. Even to another degree, a lot of races that are uncalled. Lauren Boebert is in risk of losing. Lauren Boebert, Trump plus 8 seats.
I honestly don't understand that one. There's no reason that should be that close.
Joe Kent, the populist, potentially National Socialist-y Republican candidate from Washington 3rd District, facing a potential loss there. Emphasis on he emphasizes both the nationalist and socialist emphasis of his platform in particular, as well as some unusual ties to some particular people in that district is facing a pretty substantial problem. Yesli Vega obviously was not on the list of the worst, but she certainly ran worse than you would expect against Spanberger. Even people like Anna Paulina Luna, who won, she won by a margin less than expected. I think her margin was only 7 points or so. That's well below what DeSantis performed there. That's a margin where I would be concerned if I was her going into 2024. But this is consistent with a lot of these Trump-endorsed candidates. Tim Michaels, another one. They did a lot worse than expected, sometimes because they were bad candidates and sometimes because it was just Trump touching them that made them bad.
Yeah, I mean, the Trump endorsement definitely was definitely not helpful to anybody here.
Oh, I forgot to mention Blake Masters. Blake Masters here too.
Well, Blake Masters might still win.
He could.
Arizona's being really strange. But if you had told me Tuesday morning that Brian Kemp was going to win by 9.5, I would have said Walker wins outright.
Mm-hmm. If I had told you that Brian Kemp was going to win by 9.5, Republicans were going to get a supermajority in North Carolina, DeSantis was going to win by 20, and Lee Zeldin was going to come within 7 points of unseating Kathy Hochul,
I would have said 250 Republican House seats and a 53-seat majority in the Senate. Unironically, this is bizarre.
It's beyond bizarre. This is, I think that's a good thing. I think hopefully this lights a fire under both parties. One, the Republicans to take things seriously, to not just to actually. One thing that's good is that most of the election denier candidates have admitted they have lost. That's a good sign. That is a good sign. I hope we see more of that going forward, including Stacey Abrams. I'm including Stacey Abrams in this list for that matter because she did concede and admit she had lost. It's hard to do that when you lost by 9, but it's always potentially out there. On the Democrats, I think they also need to look at this and realize that they have been gifted a big opportunity with the Trump era. And when that era ends, because it will end, they're going to have to come to terms with the fact that they're going to face a stronger Republican opposition that the same attacks will not work on. You can be excited about the Senate race. You can be excited about some of the House things, but you also got to realize this is still probably going to be an R+2 year. You did bleed urban and rural voters, minority voters long term. You cannot afford to lose those parts of your coalition.
No.
But I think there's room for introspection on both sides.
Keep coming back.
Yeah. I think there's room for introspection on both sides here. I think going forward, having a closely divided House, having a Senate that's 51 Democrats, 50 Democrats, or 51 Republicans in a very close House would not necessarily be a bad thing for the country. It could force Joe Biden a bit more to the center, could force some actual serious discussion among the middle, rather than the Lauren Boeberts of the world or the Ilhan Omars of the world dominating the discussion. When you're at this range of House votes, what really does matter is that middle. You cannot control, I don't care how good Nancy Pelosi is, she cannot control a 218, 219 Democratic House. When 4 members or squad members and the additional more joining, that's not controllable. Kevin McCarthy cannot control 220 Republicans. When you have Lauren Boebert,
Kevin
have
McCarthy
Matt Gaetz,
wouldn't even be speaker.
No. So I don't think this is necessarily a bad thing going forward for either side, but I do think it's an opportunity for whichever side can come to their senses first and truly take advantage of this.
Well, to that point, I mean, I don't know that that's going to happen on either side because it looks like I think it looks like Trump and DeSantis are about to nuke each other, and it looks like New York isn't going to be doing any introspection. So.
Yeah, no introspection from New York. We don't know if Trump is still going to announce on the 15th. It would seem like poor timing. He spent most of the last couple days on Truth Social. 1, saying that he won more votes than Ron DeSantis. 2, touting the number of candidates that he endorsed that won, and saying, I don't care about what happened to the rest of the party. My candidates did really well. No one's ever had as great of a record as me. Just complete strings of nonsense that are helping no one.
As of 2 p.m., he was still running. He was still announcing on Tuesday. He said it was still a go and that invitations to the event would be going out today. Mm-hmm. So
we really don't know. But this could be a blunder. This could be a strategic blunder for him. This is not the time to announce victory because victory did not happen. This is not victory.
I think Trump is the weakest he's ever been. I still think he beats DeSantis, but I think he's the weakest he's ever been.
Yeah, I would say this might be at his moment.
If there is a moment, I know people have said this over the last 6 years. Actually, no, what has it been? Over the last 8 years of Trump, it is however long you want to determine the era, have said this is the moment they finally turn on him. This is the moment they find it's never happened. What I will say is if there's an opportunity for it, the moment where all the Trump candidates do bad and all the other normal Republicans or even populist Republicans that are just not stupid do fine. This is like the moment you can kind of look at this and say, this is what works. This is what doesn't. Clearly something Ron DeSantis and Brian Kemp are doing is working. And something Herschel Walker and Doug Mastriano, Tudor Dixon are doing is not working.
Yeah, I mean, maybe. I don't see it. I still don't think they're turning on him.
I don't see it either. But, if there's a time for it, this is the opportunity. You got.
I'd say this is. I don't know if I wouldn't say that everything's going to turn on him, but I would say there's like an opportunity for like the 30% who are against him to turn into like a 50%, I'd say.
Which still isn't enough if there's like 5 Republicans running for president because they all want to be president. And like Ron in 2016.
Yeah, Ron DeSantis, Glenn Youngkin, and Tim Scott are all about to split the anti-Trump.
Oh, you're forgetting Nikki Haley and Larry Hogan and Chris Sununu as well.
Beautiful.
I actually think Sununu said he doesn't want to do that. I think
Why would Sununu want to do that?
It'll just be Larry Hogan, I think.
It'd be a vanity project.
Why would Sununu even want to try? The New Hampshire Republican Party just got kind of nuked.
He came out fine. Like
he did. He was the only one.
But yeah, with that, this is our brief election special. We'll have additional updates for you when we have these results in. We actually know who controls the House, who controls the Senate, all this stuff. Until then, thank you guys for watching. We really appreciate all of your support here. We had over 21,000 people watching our stream on Twitter on Tuesday. So if you're one of those or you're watching us on Twitch or YouTube, thank you. We do really appreciate that. Be sure to like and subscribe if you do appreciate what we're doing. It helps us grow, helps us move Elections Daily to new places, and helps us really have some new opportunities to improve our coverage and improve our ability to inform and analyze for you. You can find us at Twitter at DE Cunningham 2, at Joseph Szymanski, and at Dylan W. Brown 1, at Twitter at elections_daily, and elections-daily.com. But yeah, until next time, this has been Elections Weekly, and we'll see you on the next episode.